Have you ever noticed that some of the smartest people you know never seem to get where they want to go? They have talent, they have good ideas, they know all the right things to do, yet years go by, and somehow they're still standing in the same place. Meanwhile, someone less talented, less experienced, and sometimes even less prepared ends up building the business, changing careers, losing the weight, or creating the life they dreamed about. For a long time, I thought success came down to intelligence. Then I thought it was discipline. Later, I blamed luck. But the older I got, the more I started noticing something else. A lot of people don't fail because they're incapable. They don't fail because opportunities are missing. They fail because they never fully commit. They always leave a door open, a backup plan, a safety net, an escape route. And that sounds responsible. It sounds mature. But sometimes that backup plan quietly becomes the reason plan A never works. Because when things get difficult, and they always do, the mind naturally moves toward comfort, not toward growth, not toward solutions, toward escape. Most people don't realize it, but the thing holding them back may not be fear of failure. It may be the fact that they have somewhere else to run. And once you see this, you start looking at your goals very differently. Most people believe having a backup plan is smart. Honestly, I used to think the same thing. It feels safe. It feels responsible. It helps you sleep better at night. But here's what I've noticed. The moment you create an easy way out, part of your mind stops fighting for the thing you actually want. You tell yourself you're fully committed, but deep down, you know there's another option waiting if things get uncomfortable. And that's where the problem starts. Because every goal gets hard at some point. Every business struggles. Every relationship hits rough patches. Every fitness journey has days when you want to quit. In those moments, your brain has two choices. It can look for a solution, or it can look for an exit. Most people think they choose consciously. They don't. The brain loves comfort. It loves certainty. It loves the path with the least resistance. So when plan B is sitting right there, nice and easy, your attention starts drifting toward it. Not all at once. Little by little. You stop pushing as hard. You stop being creative. You stop taking risks. You stop solving problems. And before long, plan A becomes something you used to care about. The truth is, a backup plan can sometimes make you feel secure, but it can also make you less committed. And half-hearted commitment rarely creates extraordinary results. Think about the hardest thing you've ever done. Maybe it was paying bills when money was tight. Maybe it was raising children. Maybe it was starting over after losing something important. Chances are you found strength you didn't even know you had. Why? Because you had no choice. That's something life teaches over and over again. When something is optional, we treat it differently. We say, we'll try, we'll see what happens, we'll give it a shot. But when something becomes necessary, everything changes. You stop wondering if you can do it. You start figuring out how. Pressure has a strange way of waking people up. It forces focus. It forces creativity. It forces action. I've seen people spend years talking about a dream. Then suddenly a deadline appears, a crisis happens, or life backs them into a corner, and somehow they accomplish in 6 months what they couldn't do in 6 years. The ability was always there. The effort was always possible. The difference was urgency. There's a huge gap between wanting something and needing something. When you want something, you work on it when it's convenient. When you need it, you find a way no matter what. And sometimes the biggest breakthroughs happen when the option to quit disappears. Back in 1519, a Spanish commander named Hernán Cortés arrived in the New World with a small group of men. What stood in front of them was one of the most powerful empires of that time, the Aztec Empire. His soldiers were scared. Honestly, who wouldn't be? They were far from home, heavily outnumbered, and facing an enemy they barely understood. The men started thinking about retreat. Going back to Spain suddenly sounded a lot safer than moving forward. Cortés saw what was happening. He knew that as long as those ships were sitting in the harbor, his soldiers would never fully commit. Part of their minds would always be focused on escaping. So he made a shocking decision. He ordered the ships to be destroyed. Just like that, the only way home was gone. Imagine how that must have felt. One moment you have a choice, the next moment you don't. Now there was only one direction left, forward. Whether every detail of the story is historically accurate isn't really the point. The lesson has survived for hundreds of years because people recognize the truth behind it. When quitting is no longer an option, your mindset changes. You stop wasting energy thinking about retreat. You stop asking, what if this doesn't work? Instead, you start asking, how do I make this work? That's when people often discover strengths they never knew they had. Sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't the challenge in front of us. It's the escape route behind us. What's interesting is that Cortés wasn't the only person connected to this idea. Centuries earlier, a military leader named Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed into Spain with his army. According to the story, after landing, he ordered his fleet to be burned. Then he told his soldiers something simple and powerful. Behind you is the sea. In front of you is the enemy. Think about that for a second. No backup plan, no rescue mission, no easy way home. Only one path forward. And history is full of stories like this. Different countries, different centuries. Same principle. The people who changed history didn't always have more resources. They didn't always have better odds. But they often shared one thing in common. They committed completely. They reached a point where turning back was no longer part of the plan. That's what made them dangerous. Not because they were fearless, because they removed the option of running away. Most people spend years keeping one foot in and one foot out. They want success, but they also want perfect safety. History shows us that the people who make the biggest impact usually choose one side. They commit, they move forward, and they accept the risk that comes with it. For a long time, I believed having a backup plan would make me perform better. It felt logical. If things went wrong, at least I'd have something to fall back on. But research suggests something surprising. When people know they have an alternative waiting for them, they often put less effort into their main goal, not because they're lazy, because the brain quietly adjusts its level of commitment. Think about it. If part of you already knows there's another option available, you're less likely to push through discomfort. You're less likely to stay creative when problems show up. You're less likely to keep fighting when things get frustrating. The mind starts protecting the backup plan instead of fully investing in the primary one. I've seen this happen in real life. People say they want to start a business, but they're emotionally committed to the job they can always return to. They say they want to get healthy, but they keep making exceptions every time things become inconvenient. They say they want change, but they never remove the habits that keep pulling them back. The safety net feels comforting, and sometimes it is necessary, but sometimes it's also an invisible trap. It keeps you from falling, sure, but it can also keep you from jumping. And many people spend years wondering why they never reached their full potential, without realizing they were holding on to the very thing that was keeping them stuck. There's an old idea that became popular in Japanese culture called Hasui no Jin. It roughly means fighting with your back against the river. Think about that image for a second. You're standing there. The enemy is in front of you. A river is behind you. If you run, you drown. If you want to survive, you move forward. It's a simple idea, but it's powerful, because most of us spend our lives keeping escape routes open. We want the goal, but we also want an easy way out if things get uncomfortable. We want success without uncertainty, growth without risk. The problem is that real commitment doesn't work that way. I've noticed that some of the biggest changes in my life happened when I stopped asking whether I should continue and started focusing only on how to continue. That's what this philosophy is really about. Not being fearless, not being reckless, just reaching a point where you've made up your mind. No more negotiating with yourself. No more looking over your shoulder. All your energy goes in one direction, forward. And when people do that, something changes. Their focus gets sharper. Their effort becomes consistent. They stop wasting energy on doubt. That's why this idea has lasted for centuries. Because whether you're building a business, changing your health, or chasing a dream, the moment you remove retreat from the conversation, your chances of success increase dramatically. One lesson life keeps teaching me is that there's a huge difference between saying, "I'll try," and saying, "I must." When people say they'll try, it usually sounds good. The intention is there. But the commitment isn't. I'll try to lose weight. I'll try to start my business. I'll try to learn Spanish. We've all said things like that. The problem is that trying leaves room for excuses. If things get busy, we stop. If things get hard, we pause. If results don't come quickly, we move on. But when something becomes a must, the conversation changes completely. A parent doesn't try to feed their child. They do it. Someone who absolutely needs a job doesn't try to find work. They find a way. I've seen people spend years struggling to learn a language. Then they move to a place where nobody speaks English. 6 months later, they're having conversations every day. What changed? Not their intelligence, not their talent, the level of necessity. When something becomes essential, the human mind becomes incredibly resourceful. That's why the people who achieve extraordinary things often aren't the most gifted. They're the ones who decide that quitting is no longer an option. Most people think success comes down to motivation. I used to believe that too, but over time, I've realized that environment is often more powerful than motivation, because motivation comes and goes. Your environment stays. If you put yourself in a situation where progress is optional, you'll probably make progress only when you feel like it. But if you create an environment where progress becomes necessary, everything changes. Think about language learning. You can buy books, watch videos, and take classes for years. But move to a small town where nobody speaks your language, and suddenly you learn much faster. Why? Because the environment forces adaptation. The same thing happens with fitness, business, and personal growth. People often wait until they feel motivated, but successful people usually build environments that make action easier and procrastination harder. They remove distractions. They create deadlines. They commit publicly. They put themselves in situations where moving forward becomes the natural choice. Human beings are incredibly adaptable, more adaptable than most people realize. The challenge isn't usually a lack of ability. The challenge is that we've created environments that allow us to stay comfortable. Change the environment, and very often, the results start changing too. One thing I didn't understand when I was younger was how exhausting it is to keep making the same decision over and over again. Every morning starts with a negotiation. Should I go to the gym or skip it today? Should I work on my goals or just relax for a few hours? Should I save money or buy something I don't really need? None of these decisions seem huge by themselves, but after weeks, months, and years, they drain you. That's the problem with relying on willpower. Willpower gets tired. I've noticed that the most consistent people aren't necessarily more disciplined than everyone else. They just make fewer decisions. They remove the debate. The workout is already scheduled. The healthy food is already in the fridge. The work gets done at the same time every day. No discussion, no argument, no bargaining. The decision was made long ago, and honestly, that's freeing. Because every time you leave the door open for negotiation, you're giving yourself another chance to quit. The more options you create, the easier it becomes to choose comfort. The less you have to decide, the more energy you have to actually move forward. Sometimes success isn't about making better decisions. It's about making fewer unnecessary ones. I think one of the biggest turning points in life happens when you stop seeing something as a goal and start seeing it as part of who you are. That's when everything changes. Amateurs usually keep one foot out the door. They want success, but they also want an easy exit if things don't work out. Professionals don't think that way. A real entrepreneur doesn't wake up wondering whether they're an entrepreneur today. That's who they are. A serious athlete doesn't decide every morning whether fitness matters. It's already part of their identity. The same goes for artists, writers, musicians, and anyone who becomes great at what they do. At some point, they stop treating it like an experiment. They stop testing the waters. They commit. I've learned that lasting change rarely comes from motivation alone. It comes from identity. When you say, "I'm trying to start a business," your actions look one way. When you say, "I am a business owner," your actions start looking very different. The same person, different identity. And once your identity changes, your standards change, your habits change, your decisions change, because you're no longer acting like someone who hopes to succeed. You're acting like someone who already belongs in that role. Now, when people hear "burn the boats," they sometimes think it means doing something extreme. Quit your job tomorrow. Risk everything. Jump without looking. That's not what this is about. Real commitment is smart, not reckless. I've found there are levels to it. The first level is public commitment. Tell people what you're going to do. Announce it. Make it real. Once other people know, it's harder to quietly walk away. The second level is putting something valuable on the line. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's your reputation. When you've invested something meaningful, you naturally pay more attention. You show up differently. Then there's the third level, the point of no return. Signing the lease, buying the one-way ticket, registering for the marathon, giving notice at work, the moment where moving backward becomes harder than moving forward. That's where real transformation often begins. Not because pressure magically creates success, but because pressure forces action, and action creates momentum. The truth is, most people stay stuck because they never fully commit. They keep waiting for certainty, but certainty rarely comes first. Commitment comes first. Then, confidence follows. This is probably the question that stops most people. What if I give it everything I've got, and it still doesn't work? I've asked myself that question more times than I can count. Maybe you have too. The truth is, failure hurts. Nobody enjoys it. Nobody dreams about working hard and coming up short. But here's something life has taught me. The biggest losses usually don't come from failing. They come from never trying in the first place. Because when you go all in on something, even if you don't get the exact result you wanted, you never walk away empty-handed. You gain skills. You gain experience. You gain confidence. You learn things about yourself that you could never learn by staying comfortable. I've seen people spend years playing it safe. 10 years later, they're still in the same place. wondering what might have happened if they had taken the chance. I've also seen people take risks and fail, but those people rarely stay down for long. Why? Because they're different after the experience. Stronger, smarter, more resilient. Failure has a strange way of teaching lessons that success never could. And sometimes the person you become during the journey is worth more than the goal itself. At the end of the day, the people who move furthest in life aren't the people who avoid mistakes. They're the people willing to step into uncertainty and keep moving anyway. Before this video ends, I want to leave you with one simple challenge. Take a few minutes today and ask yourself an honest question. What is the plan B in your life that's quietly weakening plan A? Maybe it's the job application you're keeping just in case. Maybe it's the business idea you've never fully committed to. Maybe it's a relationship you're holding on to even though you know it's over. Maybe it's something nobody else knows about except you. Whatever it is, identify it. Look at it honestly. Then ask yourself whether it's protecting you or holding you back. You don't have to make a dramatic decision overnight, but make one move today. Delete the number. Cancel the backup option. Tell someone about your goal. Commit publicly. Create a situation where moving forward becomes easier than moving backward. Small actions create big changes. The important thing is not tomorrow, it's today. Because every day you wait is another day spent standing between the life you have and the life you want. Most people think their lives will change once they feel ready. But readiness is often an illusion. Nobody feels completely ready to start the business. Nobody feels completely ready to move across the country. Nobody feels completely ready to chase a dream that matters. Life doesn't change when we spend years preparing. Life changes when we commit. When we stop keeping one foot in the past and one foot in the future. When we decide that moving forward matters more than staying comfortable. The truth is, success doesn't always belong to the smartest person in the room. It doesn't always belong to the most talented either. More often than not, it belongs to the person who refuses to turn around. The person who stays when things get hard. The person who keeps going when quitting would be easier. The person who burns the boats and chooses to move forward. Because in the end, commitment creates momentum. Momentum creates progress. And progress creates the life most people only dream about. If today's story gave you a new perspective on commitment, courage, and what it really takes to move forward, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Quiet Growth Lab. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful stories and timeless lessons that inspire growth, resilience, and meaningful change. And thank you for spending your time with us today. We never take that for granted. Stay focused on what matters, stay committed to the path you've chosen, and keep moving forward one step at a time. We'll see you in the next video on Quiet Growth Lab.